Okay, so this is called Shibboleth, and it is an installation piece that existed in 2007 and 2008, and it was in the Tate Modern. So if you look at this area here, this big like hallway, the Tate Modern used to be like a big turbine hall for like a factory. And so they made this into like a place for installations. And this is the exact same place where the sunflower seeds were. And like if you looked at the side here, that's where people are taking pictures. And so this piece is basically exactly where the sunflower seeds were. So Doris Salcido is the artist, and she's Colombia's most renowned artist. And Shibboleth took the form of a 548-foot-long crack in the floor of the turbine hall, the main lobby of the Tate Museum in London. And her installation is a powerful commentary on the experience of immigrants living in Europe. So you're wondering about where Shibboleth comes from. The term Shibboleth is a specific term that takes its title from an Old Testament story in which the ability to pronounce the word was used by the victorious Gileadites as a test to identify members of the tribe of Ephraim who were trying to sneak back into their home territory. And so they would catch the people, and if they couldn't say it correctly, they were revealed as Ephraimites and they were killed. So because each language has different ways of pronouncing different letters and so on, people back then, like the people of the Gileadites, would do the SH, so you'd hear, and the TH, so you'd hear Shibboleth. But the Ephraimites wouldn't hear that or know how to like move their mouths to say Shibboleth, so they would say Sibboleth or Sibboleth. Like they wouldn't be able to say it. And so that was a way of identifying their ethnicity or identifying their race because if you looked at them, they looked the same. It wasn't like a different color or a different gender. It is just about different ethnicity. And so this is her way of showing ethnocentrism with that idea of trying to identify who is who. So, and that's something that members of all society use within their own cultural perspectives to judge others. People accept what is familiar and reject what seems strange or foreign. This is known as ethnocentrism. The process of cultural exclusion leads people to exaggerate and intensify their cultural and racial differences. So again, like I said, Shibboleth was originally a test phrase used to identify members of outsider groups. Today, the meaning of Shibboleth has broadened to include customs that distinguish one group from another. So Salcido chose Shibboleth as the title of her work because it refers to when you are recognized as someone that is different. So Salcido's installation baffled many museum visitors, right? It's a crack in the floor. But there's some kind of message behind it, although I don't know what it is, admitted one confused tourist. But it's a visible metaphor to convey an abstract message. Salcido deliberately designed a long fissure in the turbine hall floor to disrupt the museum's space. This physical disruption calls symbolic attention to the social fissures caused by the unwanted presence and marginalized immigrants in European society. Shibboleth did not entirely disappear when its 6 months exhibition ended in April of 2008. After engineers sealed the fissure, a scar remained on the museum floor. So there is a permanent mark that provides an enduring representation of the unresolved legacy of racial and ethnic discrimination. And if we were making connections on this one, we could really kind of see like how the Jacob Lawrence migration of the Negro with the dividing line functions as an example of a barrier between different groups and also as a scar. But for this one, the crack starts as a hairline, and then it snakes across the room. And Salcido claims that the work made elsewhere was installed over 5 weeks, but it took her over a year to construct. So what she's saying is that the making of it is not important. People asked her how deep the fissure goes, and she replied, it's bottomless. It's as deep as humanity. And so people even tested that, so you could see the lady with her head in there. But there was also wire mesh embedded within the exposed opening, and she said that was because the most common means of control was used to define borders and divisions. So that represents borders, or the experience of immigrants, the experience of segregation, the experience of racial hatred. The space in which illegal immigrants occupy is a negative space, and so this piece is in the negative space. So, people said, oh, it's an optical illusion, and the Tate director said, the sculpture has been made in the most painstaking, meticulous way by Doris and her team before it was slowly inserted into the turbine hall. And one of the things that Salcido is trying to address is the long legacy of racism and colonialism that underlies the modern world. And Shibboleth is a custom phrase or use of language that acts as the test. So this is a way of saying, do you belong or not? She said that in the history of racism, it runs parallel to the history of modernity and the untold dark side of that. For hundreds of years, Western ideas in progress and prosperity have the underpinnings by colonial exploitation and the withdrawal of basic rights from others. In our own time, Salcido is trying to remind us to remain that it remains defined by the existence of a huge socially excluded underclass in the Western world as well as post-colonial societies. In breaking open the museum floor, Salcido is exposing a fracture in modernity itself. Her work encourages us to confront our own beliefs on our own ethnocentrism and our belief on racism, and and I definitely think that this, even though it's still there, like the theory behind it is absolutely topical right now. I mean, we could talk about Shibboleth in regards to what's happening with the refugees in Syria and in Europe, and the refugees in Africa, and even the refugees from Central America who are being slowly admitted to the United States in recent days. So, even though this was done more than a decade ago, it definitely resonates in modern society today. And I wish it was still there and we could still see it, but it's covered now. So, okay, so that's Shibboleth.